had seen him before. His hands were ragged from years spent working with nets and fishing hooks. Not that mine are any different, with my buckets and rags and dirty water. I suppose I have a few calluses of my own. If his hands didn't give him away, his accent sure did. He was unmistakably from Galilee. Their speech is so unrefined. Not that mine is any different. I spend most of my time in silence. Hardly anyone talks to me. Somehow, this Galilean fisherman was chosen by a rabbi. He was so ordinary, so unspectacular. Why did Jesus want him? You know, I would watch Jesus and his disciples when they came into the city. He interacted with those fishermen like they were important, like they were going to do something in the world. Jesus would touch people. Others would make an effort to avoid. He would smile at people when others would turn away in disgust. I wonder if Jesus would have picked me out of the crowd. I'm ordinary. I wonder if he would have looked at me like I matter. No wonder his disciples are so devoted to him. We were gathered in the high priest's courtyard that night because of him, because of Jesus. The priests and Sadducees and Pharisees were livid at him. They wanted him to die. He was making blasphemous claims, the Pharisees insisted. He was parading around as if he were God. They must not have seen the same things in Jesus that I saw. Love and compassion and warmth. That night, huddled around the fire, I recognized him the moment I saw him, the fisherman with the rough hands, Peter. He was just a face in the shadow. But I had seen him before. I had seen him interact with Jesus and the other disciples. I'd heard him talk. Jesus had empowered him. This plain, everyday fisherman had become a leader. But that night, he wasn't the boisterous, right-hand man I had observed. No, he wanted to see without being seen. He wanted to hear without being spoken to. I watched the flames cast shadows on his face. You are with Jesus. I don't know why I spoke to him. I guess of all the people milling around, I knew how much it meant to Peter that Jesus had called him to follow. The guards, they weren't like Peter. They weren't nobodies. Not like me. I knew how much the rabbi's call had changed his life. I'd only dreamed of a life like that, of significance and worth. But Peter just stared at me. He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." How could Peter deny Jesus like that? Peter, the devoted disciple. Peter, who had bound himself to Jesus. Peter, the ordinary fisherman, who had been given a chance at extraordinary life. How could he ever turn away? Jesus had called him a rock. I thought Peter's loyalty, Peter's love would have been stronger than that. Stronger than shame. Stronger even than death. In that moment, I realized I wouldn't have wanted to sit where Peter sat in the shadows. As much as I long for the type of life that Peter had been given, I saw how terrified he was of his rabbi's fate. Whatever warmth and devotion Peter felt toward Jesus went cold in those moments he stared at me across the flames. It was like he hated me for asking, for daring to associate him with that blaspheming rebel. The passion and hope and loyalty that Peter felt toward Jesus died that night. I watched the glowing embers in the fire fade to gray. Whatever spark of hope had ignited in my own heart faded too. If Jesus' most devoted disciple couldn't follow him to the end, however could I? I am too much like Peter. Insignificant, powerless, ordinary. I couldn't have done what I so desperately wanted Peter to do. To be the hero. To demonstrate loyalty in the face of danger. Commitment in the face of fear. He was just a fisherman. I suppose that's the price Jesus pays for associating with people like Peter. People like me. People who value their own lives more than his love. If there is a love stronger than death, it sure isn't Peter's. And it must not be mine.